In this video, I'm going to teach you 3 tips to help you reverse your type 2 diabetes in 6 months or less. Today is week 1, day 1. Before we jump in, who am I? My name is Igor. I'm the author of an Amazon best-selling book called Type 2 Diabetes Reversal Secrets. As well, I run an online personal training company that specializes in helping diabetics reverse their type 2 diabetes in a relatively fast manner. So, before we get started, what I want you to do is to be able to compare your own blood sugar numbers from now to future weeks when your blood sugar will start coming down and down and down. So here's what I need you to do. Step 1, in the comments below, post your current blood sugar levels. This week you're going to be able to compare it to yourself in the future. Second of all, if you specifically have any questions about exercise, nutrition, or supplements for type 2 diabetes, post those in the comments below and I promise I will answer every single question. So let's jump in. What are my top 3 tips to help you reverse your type 2 diabetes in 6 months or less? In no particular order. Tip number 1 is include a source of fiber with each meal. Tip number 2 is to include a source of protein with each meal. And tip number 3, strength training. Let's elaborate on that. Tip number 1, including a source of fiber with each meal. What do I mean by that? Well, fiber, the best sources of fiber, here's a list of high fiber foods. In no particular order, things like beans, lentils, peas, cooked carrots, those are great sources of fiber in the starchy family. In addition to that, things like buckwheat, quinoa, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries are all great in the fruit family. Also, dried fruits in general are very high in fiber, things like dates, prunes, dried apricots, and so on, and seeds. So flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds. These are all great sources of fiber. What I want you to do is include one source of fiber with each meal, one of these sources of fiber. Now, if you're wondering, what about fruits? Aren't they sweet? Aren't they bad for diabetics? Well, no, that's not the case. That's a common myth that I dispel in my book, Type 2 Diabetes Reversal Secrets. It is perfectly fine to have fruits, including dried fruits, in your diet as a diabetic, and it might actually be beneficial. Again, you want to have one source of these foods per meal. If you want to have more than one, that's great. If you're looking for some numbers to shoot for, try to aim for either 35 grams of fiber per day or more, or if you're more into counting, try to get about 17 to 20 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories. Why does fiber work? Well, the reason that fiber works is twofold. Number 1 is that it turns a carbohydrate diet into a lower carbohydrate diet. There's a concept called net carbohydrates, which means that you subtract your grams of fiber from the grams of carbohydrates, and that decreases your blood sugar levels. So for instance, if you're eating a meal that contains 50 grams of carbohydrates as well as 12 grams of fiber, the net effect on the body is as if you're getting 38 grams of carbohydrates into your body. Carbohydrates tend to raise blood sugar levels more than protein and more than fat, which barely raise them at all. So that's mechanism number 1. But there's more to fiber than just its effects on carbohydrates, because when you compare low carbohydrate diets to high carbohydrate diets of equal calories, there's only a 1% difference in terms of A1C, in terms of your blood sugar levels. However, when you compare high fiber diets to low fiber diets, the effect is greater than 1%. It's about 2.5%. That's the potential for it to drop your A1C. So there's one mechanism that's understood, which is its effect on net carbohydrates, and there's also an effect that's not really understood. Why does it lower? We don't know, but there's a very clear observed effect that it does lower. So again, that is tip number 1, to have one source of fiber with each meal. My second tip is to have one source of protein with each meal. Now, what are the best sources of protein? By and large, they are meat, fish, and seafood. And I elaborate on this in much greater detail in my other videos, which are linked down in the description below. But what I consider to be grade A sources of protein are anything with 30 grams of protein per serving or more. So things like meat, fish, and seafood fit the bill. Now, there's also what I call grade B protein, and you can combine 2 or 3 servings of grade B protein to make a grade A protein. What are some examples of that? Well, grade B protein are things like Greek yogurt, but not regular yogurt, beans, lentils. These are all examples of grade B protein. Beans and lentils contain about 12 to 14 grams of protein per cup. A cup of Greek yogurt contains between 12 and 18 grams of protein per cup. And then there is grade C protein. There's a lot of myths about how much protein is in different things, and it's very easy to dispel those myths by just going to Google and searching a nutrition database and typing whatever food you want. But grade C protein is the things that people commonly say are high in protein but actually aren't. For instance, eggs are a grade C protein source because one egg contains about 6 grams of protein. So you need a lot of eggs in order to get up to 30 grams per meal or more. Another example is dairy. A glass of milk only has about 9 grams of protein per cup. Cheese, one slice of cheese has about 5 or 6 grams, so you need 2 slices or more to get into the category B. So you're aiming for either one category A protein source, or you're aiming for 2 to 3 category B, or 5 or 6 category C. Or of course you can combine categories, but it's much easier to do it with just grade A protein. Okay. Now, why am I recommending protein? Well, in and of itself, protein does not really have great effects on blood sugar. They're not bad, they're not good, they're fairly neutral. It doesn't lower blood sugar levels, it doesn't raise blood sugar levels very much. Now, so why am I recommending it? Because of its satiating effects. The single biggest factor to help you lower your blood sugar levels is just simple calories. If you go from high calories to normal calories, it will lower your blood sugar levels if you're an overweight diabetic. It's not the same case for normal weight diabetics. But if you just normalize your calories to what it should be based on your height, weight, and activity levels, you have the potential to drop your blood sugar levels as much as 4%, your A1C, which is very, very high. And protein helps you feel fuller longer, so you don't need to eat as much food in order to feel full. The easiest way to reduce your calories is by being satisfied with what you ate. In other words, if I just told you to decrease your calories, you might do so for a period of a week or two, but then you get, well, hungry. And when you get hungry, you eat. But if I told you to add things to your diet as opposed to removing things from your diet, the net effect is the same, caloric reduction. But the psychological effect is different. With the method of restriction, well, when there's restriction, there's also seduction. You're seduced by what you're restricting. But when you're adding things to your diet, you just don't want it. It's not like you want it and you're resisting it, you just don't want the extra calories. Those are 2 of my biggest tips, which is, again, get at least 5 grams of fiber per meal and get 1 high protein source per meal, or if you can't, at least get enough protein sources to get you at least 30 grams. And by the way, if you're wondering, how many grams of protein should I be getting? Well, I have videos on that, but I also have a protein calculator on my website that is linked in the description below. Protein requirements depend on things like your activity levels, whether you're sedentary, doing cardio only, cardio plus strength training, or just strength training, your age, whether you're over 60 or under 60, and your body weight. But to avoid making this all a video about protein requirements, just go to my website and the protein calculator, type in your details, and it'll tell you how much protein you specifically need. So these are my 2 tips so far, which are fiber and protein with each meal. And tip number 3, strength training. You can do overt strength training, which I've posted videos about in the past, and those are also linked in the description below. But if you don't go to the gym, if you don't want to go to the gym, there are ways of doing strength training that will still have very favorable effects on your blood sugar levels. So here is my recommendation for week 1, day 1. Sit on your couch and squeeze as many muscles as you can with about 80% force. Hold that contraction for 30 seconds, then you rest 2 minutes, and then you repeat that somewhere between 5 and 8 more times. And that's your protocol for blood sugar reduction. You repeat that kind of somewhere between 3 and 6 days per week. And you'll start to see your blood sugar come down and down and down. Why does this work? Well, when you're doing strength training, and make no mistake about it, this method of contracting your muscles is strength training. So when you contract your muscles like this, blood sugar goes out of the blood and into the muscles without insulin, which is pretty cool. In addition to that, what happens is over time, muscles start to get larger and larger, but don't worry, not like bodybuilder levels, but they do get larger and larger, and they allow you to store more sugar inside your muscles and therefore less sugar inside the blood. So these are my 3 tips in order to help you lower your blood sugar levels and possibly reverse your type 2 diabetes in a matter of 6 months or less. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please click like and subscribe. Thank you and goodbye.